Living with a Stranger and New Beginnings. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life Shattered. The morning light spilled through the kitchen window in lazy stripes, painting the apartment in shades of gold. Aaliyah leaned against the counter, cradling her coffee mug in both hands, watching the steam curl upward like a private prayer. Lena padded barefoot across the floor, a silk robe cinched haphazardly around her, hair still wild from sleep. She hummed as she rummaged through the fridge, off-key, but so effortlessly charming that Aaliyah smiled despite herself. This was their rhythm, quiet mornings, laughter tucked into the corners of the day, the kind of domestic bliss that looked ordinary to anyone else, but felt extraordinary when you were inside it. Aaliyah, with her steady hands and designer's eye, loved how Lena filled the room with color, with presence. Lena, the curator, the firecracker, never sat still long enough for the world to pin her down. Together, they were balance, stone and flame, trust and wildness. "You're staring," Lena teased, pulling out a carton of juice. "You like it," Aaliyah replied. Lena leaned in, kissed her cheek with sticky lips, and left the faintest trace of orange on her skin. And Aaliyah thought, not for the first time, if forever could freeze, I'd want it to freeze here. It didn't. The call came that evening. A rain-slick road, a truck jackknifed across 2 lanes, headlights swallowed by chaos. By the time Aaliyah reached the hospital, Lena was already gone. The days that followed collapsed into a blur of condolences and casseroles, the suffocating scent of lilies, the endless press of hands on hers, too warm, too insistent. At the funeral, she sat like a figure carved in stone, hearing voices without absorbing them. Friends she hadn't seen in months, relatives with polished smiles, everyone had a memory of Lena to offer, as if stories could fill the hole that loss had carved. But Aaliyah wasn't listening. She was counting seconds, breaths, the ache in her chest. It wasn't until the apartment was quiet again, stripped of flowers and visitors, that the weight of absence pressed down in full. Lena's jacket hung over the chair where she'd left it. Her scarf still carried the faint trace of her perfume. And on the shelf, tucked between sketchbooks and art catalogs, Aaliyah found something she had never seen before. A phone. Slim, black, unfamiliar. It pulsed faintly when she touched it, the screen locked tight behind a password she didn't know. For the first time since Lena's death, the numbness cracked. Not from grief, but from the sharp edge of a question she hadn't thought to ask. What else had Lena kept from her? Chapter 2. The First Crack. The phone sat on the table for days, silent, accusing. Aaliyah had tried a dozen codes, birthdays, anniversaries, Lena's favorite numbers, but the screen never yielded. She told herself to leave it, that grief made her desperate for something to hold on to. And yet, every time her eyes strayed to it, she felt the faint pulse of a secret just out of reach. She buried herself in work to fill the hours. But the world seemed painted in halftones now, as if all color had drained with Lena's laughter. When she finally forced herself to sort through Lena's things, she discovered how grief lived in the smallest betrayals, lipstick stains on wine glasses, sketches smudged with coffee, receipts that told the story of days she'd never noticed passing. That was when the phone rang. The vibration was muffled beneath a stack of books, startling Aaliyah so sharply she nearly dropped the box she was carrying. She scrambled for it, staring at the screen, unknown number. Her thumb hovered, then pressed. "Laura," a man's voice asked, smooth, accented. For a moment, Aaliyah forgot how to breathe. "No," she said. "You must have the wrong." "Don't play games," the man interrupted. "The auction was supposed to be last week. My client grows impatient." "Where's the piece?" "Auction. Piece. Laura." The words felt foreign in her ears, jagged with meanings she couldn't grasp. She stammered something, denial, confusion, but the line went dead before she could form a full sentence. Aaliyah sat frozen, the phone hot against her palm. "Laura." Later, rifling through Lena's papers, she found something even stranger. A small brass key taped inside the cover of an old sketchbook, and behind it, an ID card. Not Lena's. At least, not the Lena Aaliyah had known. The photo was hers, but the name printed beneath read Laura Devine. Her hands shook as she turned the card over, the sharp edge biting into her skin. This wasn't grief playing tricks. This was real. That night, unable to silence her thoughts, Aaliyah unlocked Lena's laptop. One by one, she tried the passwords she knew Lena used, until finally, on the third attempt, the screen flickered to life. Files, emails, encrypted folders. And among them, clues that her partner had lived not one life, but two. High-value art transactions. Hidden accounts. Emails written in careful, coded language. It was only when she clicked open a photo attachment that her breath caught completely. Lena, smiling, radiant, standing arm in arm with a woman Aaliyah had never seen. And yet, the intimacy between them spoke louder than words. The perfect life Aaliyah thought she had built was starting to crack, and through the fissures poured a flood of questions she wasn't ready to face. Chapter 3. The Accomplice. The city at night had a way of swallowing silence. Neon signs flickered against wet pavement, headlights cutting through the mist like impatient ghosts. Aaliyah walked with her coat pulled tight, the key from Lena's sketchbook burning in her pocket. She hadn't told anyone what she'd found. How could she? To say it aloud would make it real, and she still wasn't ready to admit that Lena, her Lena, might have been someone else entirely. Scribbled in the notes was a code, the phone she found. She used the address buried in the phone's notes app. The building was unremarkable, another glass and concrete block on the edge of downtown. But inside, the apartment the key opened was stripped bare. A bed. A desk. Canvases leaning against the wall, some finished, others only half-sketched. Unlike their cozy home filled with color and books, this space felt surgical, temporary, as if it belonged to someone who was always halfway out the door. On the desk sat a metal lockbox. Inside, stacks of documents, passports with different names, bank statements and currencies Aaliyah had never seen. And tucked between them, a photo of Lena. No smile this time. No warmth. Just a cold, almost defiant stare, as though daring the camera to look closer. Aaliyah's chest constricted. This wasn't her Lena. This was someone else entirely. The sound of footsteps behind her snapped her out of it. She spun, heart hammering. A woman leaned against the doorframe, tall, dark-haired, eyes sharp as glass. She looked at Aaliyah as if she were studying a forgery. "You're late," the woman said. I think you've made a mistake," Aaliyah managed. The stranger smirked. "Don't. I know who you are. Laura said you'd handle the last part if she couldn't. So here we are." Aaliyah's throat went dry. "Laura?" The woman stepped closer, her perfume sharp, expensive. "Lena. Laura. Whatever you want to call her." She was good at names. Good at making people believe. That's why we worked so well together. Her gaze raked over Aaliyah, testing, assessing. "You're not here to back out, are you?" The woman cut her off, placing a folded sheet of paper on the desk. "The buyer expects the piece in 2 weeks. You deliver, you walk away. Simple. Unless, of course, you'd rather explain to people why your name is all over the transfers Laura left behind." The air felt suddenly thin, as though Aaliyah couldn't inhale deeply enough. Her world had already cracked once. Now it was threatening to collapse altogether. The woman, whoever she was, watched her with a patience that felt predatory. "You look lost," she said softly. "But trust me, you'll find your way. Laura trained you better than you realize." She left without another word, her heels clicking like gunshots against the floor. Aaliyah stood alone, surrounded by evidence that the life she had shared, the love she had believed in, was a canvas painted over too many times to tell what was real. But the part that frightened her most was not the lies she'd uncovered. It was the undeniable pull in her chest whispering that she had no choice but to step into the shadows Lena had left behind. Chapter 4. The Secret Apartment and the Missing Art. The apartment was supposed to be a refuge, a place Aaliyah and Lena had built together, brick by brick, memory by memory. Now every object carried a double meaning, every silence felt staged. She sat at Lena's desk long after midnight, the stranger's words looping in her mind. "The buyer expects the piece in 2 weeks." She had no idea what that meant, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. A clue in the phone's notes, coordinates, and a code led her deeper. When she found the second apartment, hidden in a faceless building on the city's edge, she half expected to feel nothing. But when the door clicked open, her breath caught. It was clinical. A couch that looked barely used. Blank walls. No warmth, no trace of life. The air smelled faintly of turpentine. Canvases leaned against the far wall, some painted through, others left raw with pencil grids and brushstrokes half-finished. They weren't Lena's style, at least, not the Lena Aaliyah knew. These weren't bursts of color and feeling. They were copies. Immaculate, precise, soulless. She knelt, flipping through them, her designer's eye picking out the subtle distortions that would pass unnoticed by most. Forged. Dozens of them. Her stomach turned cold. On the table sat an envelope with a single photo inside, a painting, dark and opulent, sealed with a wax mark and a handwritten note. Delivery pending. The valuable piece. The one the buyer was waiting for. She had no idea how Lena had gotten this deep, how long she had been living this second life, but one thing was clear: Lena wasn't just curating art. She was making it. Selling lies in gilded frames to men who would kill for them. As Aaliyah's hands trembled over the photo, another slip of paper slid free. She froze. It was a photograph. Not of art this time, but of Lena. With the same woman she had seen in the encrypted files. This time, there was no mistaking it. Their bodies pressed close, laughter frozen in candid intimacy. It wasn't business. It was something else. Aaliyah dropped the photo as if it burned. The world tilted, grief crashing into rage, heartbreak tangling with fear. Had Lena ever truly loved her, or had she been another carefully constructed canvas, another forgery in a long line of them? But then, memory struck her like lightning. Lena's hands in hers. The quiet moments between them that couldn't have been staged. Could they? Aaliyah pressed the heels of her palms to her eyes, fighting tears. The doubt was the cruelest part. It rewrote everything: their laughter, their late nights, their promises. And then, the thought she had been avoiding slithered forward, cold and certain. If Lena had wanted to leave this life behind, if she had been getting out as the accomplice claimed, then maybe the car accident hadn't been an accident at all. Chapter 5. The Confrontation. The days blurred, stitched together with too much coffee and too little sleep. Aaliyah moved like a ghost through her own life, haunted not by Lena's absence, but by the jagged puzzle she'd left behind. The phone buzzed with coded messages she didn't understand. The photo of Lena with that woman, too intimate, too damning, burned in her mind until she could barely look at Lena's belongings without bile rising in her throat. Finally, she stopped waiting for the answers to come to her. Through the threads of contacts and messages left behind, she pieced together a location, a high-end bar tucked behind a gallery, the kind of place where money whispered and power laughed in shadows. That's where she found the woman again. She was seated in a corner booth, dressed in black silk, the kind of elegance that looked like armor. A glass of wine in her hand, a gaze sharp enough to cut through the dim light. When she saw Aaliyah, her lips curved, not in surprise, but in something closer to recognition. "You came," the woman said, gesturing to the seat opposite her. "Laura always said you'd find your way eventually. My name is Aaliyah." Her voice cracked on the edges, but she forced steel into it. The woman tilted her head, as if cataloging her. "Names are masks. Laura wore hers well. Maybe you'll have to learn the same." "I want the truth," Aaliyah said. "All of it." The woman leaned back, swirling her wine. "The truth," she repeated, as if it were a flavor she was tasting. "Very well." And then, piece by piece, she laid it bare. Lena Lara had been one of the best forgers in the underground art market. She sold beauty wrapped in lies, and the collectors who bought her work didn't ask questions. Some knew, some didn't. It didn't matter. The money was clean enough by the time it passed through the right hands. But she had grown restless. Reckless. She wanted out. "She was done with all of us," the woman said, eyes flashing. "She said she'd built something real with you. That she couldn't keep lying. That she was ready to burn every bridge if it meant walking clean beside you." Aaliyah's throat tightened. The words didn't soothe, they tore deeper. And the accident? She whispered. The woman's gaze hardened. We don't believe in accidents. The floor seemed to drop out beneath her. Lena's laughter, Lena's warmth, it had all been a countdown, a doomed attempt to escape the inevitable. You were her accomplice, Aaliyah said, her voice raw. I was her partner, the woman corrected softly. In business. In other ways, too. She never told you that, did she? The photo in the secret apartment flashed in Aaliyah's mind, a wound she didn't want confirmed. Her nails dug crescents into her palms beneath the table. I loved her, Aaliyah said, each word shaking. The woman's eyes softened, just for a breath. So did I. But love doesn't buy freedom. The weight of it pressed down, suffocating. Lena's life, her death, all of it was bigger, darker, and more dangerous than Aaliyah had imagined. And now, by inheritance or by design, she was caught in the undertow. Chapter 6. The Chase. The night after the confrontation, Aaliyah couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on her. It began as whispers, shadows moving where they shouldn't, footsteps a beat too close behind her in the subway, a car idling too long at the corner near her apartment. Grief had left her hollow, but this was different. This was the tightening of a noose. By morning, the phone that had once been silent now wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, numbers, deadlines, coded instructions. She ignored them until one came through with chilling precision. We know where you sleep. The panic should have paralyzed her. Instead, something else took hold, anger. Aaliyah wasn't Lena, but she wasn't helpless either. She began poring over the encrypted files in the secret apartment, sketching connections, decoding patterns. What she lacked in underworld savvy, she made up for with her designer's mind, trained to see what didn't fit, to carve order from chaos. By nightfall, she noticed the tale for real. A dark sedan, headlights too patient. She ducked into a crowded street, weaving between bodies, her pulse hammering against her ribs. The sedan crawled along the curb, hunting. She ran. Her boots slapped against pavement slick with rain, her reflection fractured in neon puddles. She cut left down an alley, heart clawing at her throat, the roar of the city muffled beneath the thunder of her own breath. Behind her, the car doors slammed, men spilling out, their voices sharp and foreign. Aaliyah's mind flashed to Lena's notebooks, her scrawled maps of escape routes through the city. She followed instinct, ducking through side streets, doubling back, moving the way Lena might have taught her if truth had ever been part of their life. She made it to the river, chest heaving, the men still behind her. There, beneath the rusting skeleton of an old bridge, she found what Lena had left, a stashed lockbox, its code etched faintly on the underside of a railing. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, a USB drive and a note in Lena's familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, it means I failed. Run. Or finish what I couldn't. The men's footsteps thundered closer. Aaliyah slammed the box shut, shoving it into her bag. For the first time since Lena's death, she felt something sharper than grief. She wasn't just running anymore. She was playing. And she intended to win. Chapter 7. The Final Clue. The apartment felt empty now, hollowed by fear and exhaustion. Aaliyah sat cross-legged on the floor, the USB drive humming softly against her palm. Lena's handwriting danced across the note, familiar and impossible, tugging at a part of her she'd thought had died the day the car hit. If you're reading this, it means I failed. Run. Or finish what I couldn't. She swallowed, heart pounding. Finish what she couldn't? Her hands shook as she plugged the drive into her laptop. Files opened, blueprints, encrypted emails, spreadsheets with coded transactions. But nestled among the technical chaos was a folder labeled simply, for Aaliyah. Clicking it, she found a single video file. Lena's face filled the screen, framed in the soft glow of the studio they'd once shared, back when life had been simple. Hey, Lena began, voice hesitant, almost vulnerable. If you're watching this, I guess you've pieced things together. I should have told you everything sooner. I wanted to. I really did. But the risk, I was never just risking myself. And I wanted to protect you. I thought I could find a way out before they found me. Before anyone got hurt. Aaliyah's throat tightened. The peace, Lena continued, was never just about money. It was my way of closing the door, of paying off debts that shouldn't have touched us. I wanted a clean slate, a life with you. I wasn't running from you, love. I was running for us. Tears blurred Aliya's vision. Lena's eyes, so alive, so real, seemed to pierce through the screen. I know it looks like betrayal, Lena whispered, but everything I did was to protect what we had. I never lied about loving you. That part was always real. And if you're brave enough to finish this, to set it right, you'll understand why I had to disappear from the world I built for myself. But I need you to be careful. People who wanted me won't stop with me gone. They'll come for you. The video ended. Silence pressed against the apartment walls, heavy and suffocating. Aliya leaned back against the couch, letting the truth wash over her. Lena's double life wasn't a rejection of her. It wasn't a lie about love. It was a shield, a desperate bid to protect them both. For the first time since the accident, grief was mingled with something else, purpose. She stood, determination hardening in her chest. Lena had left her a choice, run or finish what she couldn't. Aliya knew what she had to do. Chapter 8, The Trap. The gallery smelled of varnish and secrecy. Aliya's heart pounded in rhythm with the soft hum of the air conditioning. She carried the forged painting in her hands, wrapped in linen, its colors a perfect imitation of Lena's signature brushwork. Every stroke had been copied meticulously, every shadow accounted for. This was her masterpiece, not art for beauty, but art for survival. She arrived early, choosing a seat in the corner of the private exhibition hall. The men would come expecting the piece, confident in their power. Confident that the widow, now herself a shadow of Lena, would bend beneath their threat. The first footsteps echoed in the hallway. Men in tailored suits, eyes sharp, hands brushing the small of their jackets where weapons might hide. They paused, surveying the room. Aliya felt a calm settle over her, a clarity born of necessity. She had studied Lena's moves, mapped her patterns, learned to read the underworld like a blueprint. "Are you sure she sent you?" one man asked, voice low, dangerous. "I am Lena," Aliya said softly. The words carried weight. Not Lena, but her shadow. They laughed, a sound that scraped against her nerves. "Then we'll take the painting. And then, you." She unwrapped the canvas slowly, deliberately. The painting gleamed under the lights, perfect. Every line, every shade, every tiny detail mirrored Lena's original work. One of the men stepped forward, hand outstretched. As he reached, Aliya pressed a button hidden in the frame. A soft beep, almost inaudible, but enough to alert the authorities. The men froze. Confusion flickered in their eyes. Aliya held the painting like a shield. "You've already lost," she said, voice steady, eyes blazing. "Everything you've done, every move you made, it's recorded. Every transfer, every lie, every forgery. The authorities are on their way." Panic replaced confidence. Phones were drawn, threats shouted, but Aliya didn't flinch. She had studied, planned, and now executed Lena's final play with precision. Minutes later, sirens pierced the night. The men scattered, some attempting escape, others surrendering. When the dust settled, only Aliya remained, standing in the gallery with the blank canvas she had left in place of the original forgery. She exhaled, letting the adrenaline fade, letting the enormity of what she had done sink in. Lena's secrets were no longer shadows haunting her, they were fuel. Proof of love, proof of courage, proof that, even in death, Lena had guided her. Aliya's chest tightened, not with grief, not with betrayal, but with the first taste of liberation. She had survived. She had won. Chapter 9, Aftermath. The city felt different in the quiet mornings. Sunlight reflected off glass towers, but it no longer weighed heavy on her chest. Aliya moved through her apartment with careful precision, a new rhythm settling into her bones. She unpacked boxes she hadn't touched since Lena's death, arranging her life not as it had been, but as it could be. The grief lingered, like the faint scent of smoke after a fire, but it no longer consumed her. She thought of Lena, of the secrets, of the betrayals. Love had existed real, messy, impossible, but now it belonged to memory. Aaliyah allowed herself to mourn that, to honor it, and then fold it into the foundation of who she was becoming. She reopened her studio, turning her attention back to art. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming her identity, painting her grief, her lessons, her survival into canvases that carried more honesty than any of Lena's forgeries ever could. Months passed. Aaliyah grew stronger, more confident. She moved to a new city, set up her own gallery, and started making connections on her own terms. The circle of friends she'd left behind slowly faded into fond memory, replaced with a community that saw her for herself, not as Lena's shadow. And then there was Cruz Manuelos, a martial arts instructor, owner of the gym just a block from her apartment. They had passed each other countless times, glances stolen from across the street, smiles that lingered too long, small gestures unspoken but felt. And then the storm hit. Lightning struck, igniting a fire at Cruz's gym. Aaliyah read the desperate handwritten notices plastered on the few walls that had survived. Need a place to stay. Will pay. Any help appreciated. Her heart had no choice. She offered help. One night became 2, and 2 became 2 weeks. Cruz's apologies were constant, her tension palpable, but Aaliyah's gentle reassurances, "I'm enjoying the company," breathed warmth into the chaos. And then, one night, the line between comfort and desire blurred. Cruz, exhausted, intoxicated despite her usual restraint, murmured Aaliyah's name in a dream, wet, raw, unguarded. Aaliyah lay in the other room, wide-eyed, frozen in the hush of darkness, listening to every sound. Her pulse quickened, every moan, every whispered syllable searing into memory. In that moment, Aaliyah understood. Grief could be survived. Betrayal could be endured. But desire was a different kind of reckoning. And Cruz was here to challenge everything she thought she knew about herself. Chapter 10. The First Heat. The city hummed outside Aaliyah's window, rain sliding down the glass like liquid silver. Inside, her apartment smelled faintly of lavender and paint, the comfort of her studio blending with the lingering aroma of Cruz's presence. Cruz sprawled across the couch, bare feet brushing the rug, a towel slung over her shoulders from a late-night shower. She laughed at a story Aaliyah told, the sound deep and warm, curling into Aaliyah's chest and refusing to let go. "You always make it sound like I'm a disaster," Cruz said, smirking. "You kind of are," Aaliyah teased back, brushing a strand of hair from her own face. "But in a way that's distracting." Cruz froze mid-smile, and Aaliyah felt the electric pause between them, the subtle shift in air, the heartbeat that seemed louder than the storm outside. The following nights were a dance. Shared dinners, quiet conversations, small touches that lingered too long. Aaliyah felt the pull, a hunger she hadn't allowed herself since Lena. It was dangerous, intoxicating, and utterly irresistible. Then came the night that changed everything. Cruz had had a rough day, juggling temporary housing, insurance calls, and rebuilding her gym. One drink, a mere 3 glasses, but enough, and she was adrift in the haze of exhaustion and longing. Aaliyah watched from the other room, a mixture of awe and raw anticipation, as Cruz shifted in sleep. Then, there it was again, the first sound, a low, wet whisper of Aaliyah's name. The dream, the confession, the want, it was all laid bare. Aaliyah stayed still, heart hammering. She didn't move, didn't speak. She simply listened, every moan, every breath, every unguarded sound mapping itself into her memory. Desire flared inside her, fierce and undeniable. When Cruz shifted in her sleep, Aaliyah sat down beside her, and the warmth brushing Aaliyah's arm, Aaliyah's restraint faltered. Fingers grazed skin, hesitant at first, then bolder, tracing the line of Cruz's jaw, the curve of her neck. Cruz stirred, murmuring again, the name escaping her lips in a moan that belonged to no one but Aaliyah. In that quiet storm, Aaliyah realized grief, betrayal, survival, they were all behind her. What mattered now was the pull of heat and proximity, the dangerous, intoxicating temptation that Cruz represented. And for the first time in months, Aaliyah felt alive. Truly, fiercely alive. Chapter 11. The Slow Burn. The apartment was quiet except for the rain tapping against the window, a soft percussion that seemed to mirror the quickened rhythm of Aaliyah's heart. Cruz sat cross-legged on the couch, tracing absent patterns along the hem of her shirt, eyes darting toward Aaliyah with something unspoken. Aaliyah busied herself with painting, brushes wet with colors that blurred under her hand, but her gaze kept straying. Every sigh, every shift of Cruz's body sent a shiver through her, a pull she could no longer ignore. "You're quiet tonight," Cruz said, voice low, teasing. Her eyes were sharp, knowing, unflinching. "Just thinking," Aaliyah replied, fingers brushing against the canvas. "About work." Cruz tilted her head, a slow, deliberate movement that left Aaliyah breathless. "You're thinking about me, aren't you?" Aaliyah's brush faltered, a streak of cobalt blue slicing across the wrong corner of the canvas. Maybe, she admitted, heat rising in her chest. Cruz's smirk deepened. "Good. You should." The air thickened, charged with a tension that neither dared to break. Each touch, accidental, intentional, a grazing of fingers as they reached for the same paintbrush, was a spark. Each glance lingered just long enough to set fire to nerves and imagination alike. When Cruz stretched, her arm brushing against Aaliyah's, the contact lingered longer than necessary. Aaliyah's heart slammed against her ribs. She inhaled sharply, every instinct screaming to pull back, yet every nerve was drawn forward, pulled toward the inevitable. "Do you feel it too?" Cruz whispered, leaning closer. Their faces were inches apart, breaths mingling in the dim glow of the studio lights. "Yes," Aaliyah admitted, her voice barely more than a hiss. "Every second." Cruz smiled, slow and wicked. "Good. Because I don't plan on letting this wait any longer." Aaliyah's chest tightened, desire clawing at her, a delicious torment. Every heartbeat, every glance, every brush of skin was a promise and a warning that the line between restraint and surrender was about to shatter. The storm outside mirrored the one inside the room, and Aaliyah realized nothing in her carefully rebuilt life could prepare her for what Cruz had awakened. Chapter 12. The First Surrender. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening like dark glass, but the storm inside Aaliyah's apartment hadn't eased. The studio smelled of paint, lavender, and the faint musk of desire lingering in the air from hours of quiet tension. Cruz leaned against the doorway, a shadowed silhouette, watching Aaliyah with eyes that burned with unspoken promises. Aaliyah's heart hammered, not with fear, but with longing, raw and urgent. "You've been avoiding me," Cruz said softly, stepping closer, her voice a low, commanding whisper. "You're terrified, aren't you?" Aaliyah swallowed, heat flooding her chest. Maybe, she admitted. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her brush, the act of surrendering to the moment, a battle she didn't want to fight, but didn't want to resist either. Cruz moved closer, slow, deliberate, every step measured, drawing Aaliyah into a magnetic pull she couldn't escape. Her fingers brushed Aaliyah's cheek, tracing the line of her jaw, lingering at the curve of her neck. Aaliyah's breath caught, every nerve alive with fire. "You don't have to fight me," Cruz whispered, lips hovering near her ear, hot and tempting. "Not tonight." Aaliyah's resolve melted, replaced by a desperate, aching want. She reached up, cupping Cruz's face, pulling her in until lips met in a tentative, trembling kiss. The first touch was gentle, testing the waters, but the heat escalated instantly, fingers threading through hair, hands pressing, hearts colliding in the intensity of restraint finally breaking. Cruz's hands roamed over Aaliyah's back, every movement igniting a chain reaction of sensation. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only this room, only this storm of breath and heat, only this surrender that neither wanted to end. Aaliyah gasped, breaking the kiss, foreheads pressed together, hearts racing in tandem. I've wanted this for so long," she admitted, voice shaking with urgency. "So have I," Cruz murmured, lips brushing against Aaliyah's temple, down her jaw, teasing, coaxing, each touch a promise of more. The night stretched endlessly, filled with whispered confessions, soft moans, and the intoxicating heat of bodies discovering one another. Every kiss, every touch, was both confession and claim, a surrender not just of body, but of heart and desire, fragile and fierce all at once. And when they finally collapsed against each other, breathless and trembling, the world outside no longer mattered. Grief, betrayal, fear, they were gone, eclipsed by the intensity of the storm they had found in each other. Aaliyah's first surrender wasn't just physical, it was the reclamation of life, pleasure, and trust in the wake of loss. Cruz held her close, murmuring her name against her hair, and in that embrace, Aaliyah realized that Cruz shifted, brushing a strand of hair from Aaliyah's face, her touch gentle, almost reverent. "I've never let anyone see me like this," she admitted softly, voice low, threaded with hesitation. "Not fully. I've always been careful." Aaliyah's fingers traced the line of Cruz's jaw. "Why?" she asked, curiosity mingling with tenderness. Cruz sighed, shoulders tensing. "Because letting someone in, it's dangerous. I've been hurt, betrayed, left with scars that never really healed. I don't give trust lightly." Aaliyah's heart tightened. She knew that feeling all too well, the ache of love entwined with loss, the shadow of betrayal still clinging to memory. "I understand," she whispered. "I've been there too. And yet, I still want you. I still want this." Cruz's eyes softened, shimmering with something almost fragile. "You make it feel safe," she admitted, voice catching. "I didn't think I'd ever feel that again." Aaliyah leaned in, pressing her forehead to Cruz's, sharing the quiet, sacred space between them. "I'm not perfect," she said. "I have my own scars, my own fears. But with you, I want to try. I want to let myself feel again." They stayed like that, words fading into the warmth of presence, the gentle rhythm of breathing and closeness. Every touch was a reassurance, every glance a promise. Hours passed, and the confessions deepened. Cruz spoke of past failures, of battles fought alone, of vulnerabilities she'd buried beneath layers of discipline and control. Aaliyah shared her grief, her betrayal, the raw emptiness left by Lena's death, and the strange, beautiful reclamation of her own life since. Each revelation drew them closer, not just in body, but in heart. The intimacy wasn't urgent, wasn't frantic, it was deliberate, slow, and luminous, like light spilling into cracks long hidden. When Cruz finally whispered, "I think I'm falling," Aaliyah smiled softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Me too," she breathed. And in that quiet, golden morning, they discovered that love could be fierce without fear, tender without weakness, and that true intimacy was a surrender of both body and soul, a surrender they were ready to give, together. Chapter 15. Confessions in the Dark. The night had settled quietly over the city, lights twinkling like distant stars through Aaliyah's studio windows. Cruz lay sprawled across the couch, limbs relaxed in the comfort of the space, a towel from her earlier shower draped carelessly over her shoulders. Aaliyah sat nearby, sketchpad in lap, but her eyes kept drifting, drinking in the curve of Cruz's jaw, the gentle rise and fall of her chest. Finally, unable to hold it in any longer, Aaliyah spoke, her voice low and teasing. "You know, last night I heard you." Cruz froze mid-stretch, a brow lifting in surprise. "I beg your pardon," she said, though her lips twitched with a hint of amusement. Aaliyah set her pencil down, leaning forward, eyes glinting. "In your sleep, you said my name." She let it linger, a smile teasing the edges of her lips. Loudly, very convincingly. Cruz's cheeks tinged pink, and she groaned, burying her face in her hands. "Oh no, you can't tell me you really heard that." "I did," Aaliyah said softly, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from Cruz's face. "And I didn't move. I just listened. I wanted to hear you." Cruz's head lifted slowly, eyes meeting hers, vulnerability flickering behind the smoldering heat. That's bold of you," she muttered, voice thick with embarrassment and desire. Aaliyah leaned closer, brushing her lips against Cruz's temple. "It's because I care about you," she whispered. "I want to be honest with you. I want all of this, everything between us, to be real. No secrets, no hesitation." Cruz exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders softening. She shifted, closing the distance between them, and rested her forehead against Aaliyah's. "I've never let anyone in like this," she admitted, voice trembling slightly. "Not fully. Not like this." "Then start with me," Aaliyah murmured, hands cradling Cruz's face. "Start with us. Let yourself feel, even if it scares you." And so they did. Hours passed in quiet whispers, small touches, and lingering kisses. The confessions of the night weren't just about desire, they were about trust, vulnerability, and the slow, steady weaving of two hearts into something unbreakable. By the time dawn crept over the horizon, Cruz was curled against Aaliyah, soft and warm, a tentative smile touching her lips. "I think I could get used to this," she murmured. "You already have," Aaliyah replied, pressing a kiss to the crown of her head. And for the first time since the storm had struck, both of them felt a fragile, perfect calm, a quiet before whatever challenges were still to come. Chapter 16. Shadows of the Past. The city hummed with its usual rhythm, but for Aaliyah, the familiar streets felt charged, unfamiliar, as if every shadow carried a secret. The calm she had shared with Cruz now seemed fragile, a thin veneer over something darker lurking beneath. It started with a message, a single line on her phone from an unknown number. "We know you have it. And we're coming for it." Aaliyah froze, pulse quickening. Memories of Lena's world surged, threats, shadows, deceit, the nightmarish chase she had survived. And now, somehow, those threats had found her again. Cruz noticed her tension immediately, concern darkening her features. "What is it?" she asked, stepping close, hands brushing against Aaliyah's arm. Aaliyah hesitated, then showed her the message. "It's Lena's world. Or what's left of it." "They're not done, Cruz." Cruz's jaw tightened, her martial training kicking in. "Then we deal with it. Together. Together." The words settled over Aaliyah like a shield and a spark. She had feared danger, but now she had Cruz by her side, someone fierce, unflinching, alive. The next days became a careful dance between normalcy and vigilance. Aaliyah's studio remained a sanctuary, but every knock on the door, every stranger passing her window, set her nerves on fire. Cruz trained, patrolled, planned contingencies. They moved like shadows themselves, silent, alert, ready for whatever was coming. And then it came, a figure at her door, calm and unassuming, until the moment their intent became clear. Aaliyah barely had time to react before Cruz was between her and the intruder, hands fast, precise, every move honed and lethal. Aaliyah's breath caught as adrenaline surged. Cruz's eyes met hers, fiery and protective, and in that instant, Aaliyah knew she wasn't alone anymore. She had someone to fight alongside, to trust, to surrender to, both in danger and desire. The intruder retreated, leaving a chilling warning behind, a note scrawled with Lena's old alias. "Finish what she couldn't, or it will be your end." Aaliyah's chest tightened, but she didn't falter. She looked at Cruz, whose hands were still on her shoulders, eyes steady and unwavering. "We finish this," Aaliyah said, voice firm. "We finish it together," Cruz confirmed, lips brushing Aaliyah's in a fleeting, fierce kiss, both reassurance and promise. And in the quiet aftermath, as rain began to patter against the window once more, Aaliyah realized that danger no longer paralyzed her. Desire no longer confused her. Together, they could face the shadows of the past and whatever fire awaited in the future. Chapter 17. Fire and Steel. The city's lights shimmered through the rain-streaked windows, painting the studio in gold and silver. The calm from the previous days had shattered, replaced with a pulse of tension neither Aaliyah nor Cruz could ignore. "You can't just sit and wait for them to come back," Cruz said, eyes blazing as she paced. "You need to learn to protect yourself. Not just with art, but with skill. With reflex. With steel." Aaliyah swallowed, heart hammering. Martial arts had always seemed foreign, almost intimidating, but with Cruz by her side, it felt like another language of trust and desire. Every glance, every touch became part of the instruction, part of a rhythm neither had ever known. The first session was awkward. Aaliyah stumbled, punches and blocks offbeat, muscles protesting the unfamiliar strain. But Cruz was patient, correcting, guiding, her hands brushing Aaliyah's in subtle, electrifying ways. "Focus," Cruz murmured, close enough that her breath tickled Aaliyah's ear. "Feel your center. Control your power. Trust yourself, and trust me." Aaliyah's pulse raced for two reasons: adrenaline and the proximity of Cruz. Every correction, every guiding touch sent heat coiling in her stomach. Yet beneath the desire, beneath the thrill, a fierce determination grew. She wouldn't be a victim again. Not now. Not ever. Days blended into nights. Training became ritual. Kicks, blocks, spins, and strikes, every move honed her body, sharpened her mind, strengthened her resolve. Cruz's intensity never wavered, her praise gentle yet fiery. "Better. Faster. Stronger. You're learning quickly, more quickly than I expected." And then came the night that tested it all. A shadow flickered outside the studio window, a figure from Lena's past, seeking to intimidate, to claim what Aaliyah had inherited. Cruz tensed instantly, moving in front of Aaliyah like a shield. But Aaliyah stepped forward, fists clenched, feet steady. Heart racing, muscles burning, she recalled every lesson, every drill, every push Cruz had given her. The intruder lunged. Aaliyah sidestepped, countered, a fluid motion born from days of sweat, heat, and shared focus. Cruz moved alongside her, striking in tandem, their bodies synchronized, their energy a storm of fire and steel. When the figure retreated, Aaliyah's chest heaved not from fear, but triumph. She had protected herself, and Cruz had been there, guiding and supporting, their connection deeper than ever. Cruz's hand found hers, fingers lacing together. "You did it," she said softly, pride and desire mingling in her gaze. "You're ready. You're unstoppable." Aaliyah leaned into her, lips brushing against Cruz's shoulder. "Only because of you," she murmured. "And because I want to protect us. Protect you." Their eyes met, fierce and tender all at once. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside, raw, unyielding, intoxicating. Desire, danger, trust, and fire intertwined, forging a bond neither grief nor threat could sever. And in that moment, Aaliyah realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, fierce, alive, and utterly, irrevocably entwined with Cruz. Chapter 18. Storm of Desire and Retribution. The night was thick with tension, the city alive with distant sirens and the quiet hum of electricity. Aaliyah and Cruz moved through the shadows, bodies coiled, senses sharp. Every step, every glance was synchronized, honed by days of training, desire, and trust forged in the heat of shared survival. The threats that had haunted Aaliyah's life, the remnants of Lena's dangerous past, were close now, bold enough to step into the light. But she wasn't the same woman who had trembled at a message or flinched at a shadow. She was ready. "Stay close," Cruz murmured, hand brushing Aaliyah's, the touch a tether of fire and reassurance. "Tonight it ends." Aaliyah nodded, heart racing, body alive with adrenaline and anticipation. The first figure emerged from the alley, a man sent to intimidate, to claim what wasn't his. Aaliyah moved first, stepping into the fight with confidence and precision, the moves Cruz had drilled into her flowing naturally. Blocks, strikes, pivots, every motion was purposeful, every breath controlled. Cruz struck beside her, fierce and fluid, the dance of combat intertwined with the pulse of their connection. Together, they became unstoppable, fire and steel, force and instinct, desire and determination converging in perfect synchrony. The battle escalated quickly. Shadows lunged, weapons drawn, threats pressing from every angle. Aaliyah's hands struck, her kicks precise, fueled by fear turned into fury. Cruz moved like lightning, each strike calculated, each motion a whisper of protection, each glance a silent command. "Trust yourself, trust me." Hours, or perhaps minutes, time blurred past in a flurry of motion and adrenaline. When the last intruder fell, subdued or fleeing, Aaliyah and Cruz stood together, breaths heaving, hearts pounding, skins slick with sweat and rain from the streets outside. And then, the world shifted. Cruz pressed a hand to Alia's cheek, fingers tracing the damp lines of hair against her face. "You did it," she whispered, voice low, charged with awe and desire. "We did it. Together." Alia smiled, chest heaving, pride and relief flooding her. "We're unstoppable," she breathed, lips finding Cruz's in a fierce, claiming kiss, one that carried months of desire, trust, training, and intimacy. The kiss deepened, growing hotter, a storm of sensation that mirrored the fight they had just survived. Clothing became unnecessary, touches bold and unrestrained. Every caress, every gasp, every whispered name was a confession of power and surrender, danger and devotion, desire and absolute trust. They tumbled into the aftermath, bodies entangled, hearts racing in tandem. Alia's hands roamed, exploring the lines and curves she had longed to know, every touch igniting the fire that had been simmering for months. Cruz responded in kind, heat and skill intertwined, guiding and claiming, pushing and yielding, until every gasp, moan, and whispered plea was a testament to the storm they had survived and the storm they had created between them. Finally, when their bodies stilled, hearts still hammering, foreheads pressed together, Alia realized the truth. Danger could come, threats could lurk, and shadows could rise, but with Cruz at her side, with their fire and their steel, she was untouchable. Fierce, alive, and utterly, irreversibly in love. And in that heat, that surrender, that triumph, she understood. They had survived the storm, and now they could live in its fire. Chapter 19. Calm after the storm and new beginnings. The city was quiet, washed in early morning light that painted streets and rooftops in soft gold. The chaos of the past weeks, threats, shadows, danger, felt like a distant storm, leaving behind a fragile, shimmering calm. Alia and Cruz lay entwined in the studio, sheets tangled around them, limbs pressed close, hearts still echoing the rhythm of passion and survival. The space was theirs, private and safe, a sanctuary they had carved together from fire and steel. Cruz stirred first, stretching and brushing damp hair from her eyes. She caught Alia watching her, a small, tender smile tugging at her lips. "Morning," she murmured, voice rough with sleep and satisfaction. "Morning," Alia replied, leaning in to press a soft kiss to Cruz's forehead. "We survived. All of it." Cruz's fingers traced the line of Alia's jaw, lingering, savoring. "Yes," she said, voice low, a hint of awe in the way she spoke. "And we thrived." They moved together slowly, savoring the calm, exploring the tender intimacy of touch unburdened by fear. Each kiss, each caress, was a celebration, not just of desire, but of trust, strength, and the bond they had forged in fire. Hours passed in quiet companionship, laughter spilling over small, shared jokes, the soft brush of hands on skin, the warmth of proximity. Alia's mind, once shadowed by grief and betrayal, now pulsed with hope, desire, and the certainty of love reclaimed. "You know," Cruz said after a long pause, resting her head against Alia's shoulder, "I never imagined it could feel like this. Safe, free, alive." Alia kissed the top of her head, closing her eyes. "It does," she whispered. "Because we have each other. Because we choose this, every day." And in that golden calm, the studio seemed to stretch into infinity, a perfect, sacred space for love, laughter, and life. Grief had shaped them, danger had tested them, and desire had bound them, but now they were free to simply be. Cruz rolled over, catching Alia's gaze with that slow, teasing smile that always made her pulse quicken. "So, what's next?" she asked. Alia laughed softly, the sound warm and bright. "Next," she said, "we build. Together. Art, life, us." They kissed again, soft and lingering, letting the quiet hours stretch into forever. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the storm that had passed, the battles fought, and the love that had emerged stronger, fiercer, and more alive than ever. And as they held each other close, Alia realized The past could never touch them again. They had survived, thrived, and found each other in the aftermath. And that was enough. Chapter 20. Flames of Forever. Months had passed, and the city had grown familiar again, sunlight spilling into streets, laughter echoing between walls, life moving forward in slow, beautiful rhythm. But within the studio, time seemed to bend, stretching around Aaliyah and Cruz as if the world itself had slowed to honor them. Aaliyah stood at the window, paintbrush in hand, colors bleeding across the canvas in wild, vibrant strokes. Behind her, Cruz stretched on the sofa, bare feet brushing against the wooden floor, hair tumbling like fire over her shoulders. Every glance, every movement, was a thread in the tapestry they had woven together, strong, unbreakable, intimate. "You've been quiet," Cruz murmured, rising and moving toward her, eyes gleaming with that familiar fire. "Planning your next masterpiece?" "Maybe," Aaliyah said, turning, smile tugging at her lips. "Or maybe just enjoying this moment." She reached out, fingers brushing Cruz's, and felt the electric charge that had never dulled, even after danger, desire, and the storms they'd survived. Cruz's hands found hers, entwining, holding, grounding. "I like this moment," she said softly. "You and me. No shadows. No threats. Just us." Aaliyah leaned into her, foreheads touching, breathing mingling, hearts beating in quiet harmony. "Forever us," she whispered, a vow and a promise wrapped into one. The day stretched lazily around them, a soft symphony of light, warmth, and the faint scent of paint and skin. Their laughter floated, low and intimate, a melody of desire and comfort, teasing and tenderness. And when Cruz finally pressed her lips to Aaliyah's, slow, lingering, a kiss that carried months of passion, danger, trust, and surrender, Aaliyah knew this was not just survival. This was triumph. This was love, fierce and unyielding, tempered in fire and safe in its own power. They had walked through shadows, fought storms, embraced the heat of desire, and emerged not just alive, but alive together, stronger, bolder, and utterly, irrevocably in love. And as the evening sun dipped low, painting the studio in molten gold, Aaliyah rested her head against Cruz's chest, listening to the steady drum of her heartbeat, knowing in every fiber of her being that some flames burned forever. Epilogue: Morning heat and mischief. The sun barely crested the horizon, casting a soft golden glow across Aaliyah's studio. Cruz was already awake, stretching on the couch, hair spilling like wildfire over her shoulders, eyes half-lidded but sparkling with mischief. Aaliyah stirred from her sleep, body warm from the lingering heat of last night, and immediately felt the pull. Cruz was always magnetic, even in quiet moments. "You're awake," Cruz murmured, voice low, teasing as she slid off the couch and padded toward Aaliyah barefoot. "And looking tempting. Already thinking about me." Aaliyah laughed softly, brushing a hand over Cruz's arm. "Maybe," she admitted. "But don't think I didn't notice you sneaking glances all morning too." Cruz smirked, leaning closer, her lips brushing Aaliyah's ear. "Maybe I was, hoping you'd do something about it." The room seemed to shrink, charged with a familiar tension neither could resist. Aaliyah's hands slid along Cruz's sides, pulling her closer, their lips meeting in a slow, deliberate kiss that teased, coaxed, and ignited. Minutes or hours passed in soft moans and playful teasing touches. Cruz trailed kisses along Aaliyah's neck, whispering her name like a secret spell, while Aaliyah responded in kind, fingers tracing the lines of muscle and skin she had memorized, adored, and now worshipped. "You're relentless," Cruz breathed, nuzzling her shoulder. "Do you ever rest?" "Only when I'm forced to," Aaliyah replied, tugging Cruz closer, a grin in her voice, fingers daring and bold. "And even then, maybe not long enough." Laughter, gasps, and whispered promises filled the studio, blending seamlessly with the quiet light of the morning. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the storm of desire and love thriving just within these walls. Finally, They collapsed in a tangled heap, breathless, hearts racing, skin warm from the playful fire they had stoked together. Aaliyah rested her head on Cruz's chest, listening to the steady thrum of her heartbeat, knowing that danger had passed, desire had survived, and love, raw, fierce, and endless, would always burn between them. And in the quiet aftermath, Cruz whispered, "You're impossible, but I love it." Aaliyah smiled, lips brushing her temple. "Good. Because I'm not planning to stop." The city pulsed with neon, music, and the hum of nightlife as Aaliyah and Cruz stepped onto the crowded streets. Aaliyah's hand brushed Cruz's, fingers entwined, the casual touch loaded with all the heat they had learned to wield behind closed doors. "You're insufferably distracting," Cruz murmured, her voice low, almost a growl, as Aaliyah laughed, the sound mingling with the clamor around them. "You love it," Aaliyah teased, leaning close, letting her lips hover near Cruz's ear. "You can't deny it." Cruz smirked, eyes flashing with mischief, then pressed a bold, fleeting kiss to Aaliyah's temple, just enough to make her shiver. "Maybe, but not here. Not now, or maybe exactly here, exactly now." They moved through the crowd, every glance, every brush of skin, every whispered word an electric current. Cruz would occasionally press against Aaliyah deliberately, hip, shoulder, thigh, testing limits, teasing boundaries, and Aaliyah responded with subtle, provocative touches of her own, fingers brushing along the small of Cruz's back, lips grazing her collarbone when no one was looking. Aaliyah felt the thrill of being seen yet unseen, desire wrapped in the thrill of risk. Every laugh, every accidental touch, every playful lean became a game they both reveled in, bold, sultry, teasing. Finally, unable to resist, they ducked into a quieter alley, pressed against the brick wall, shadows cloaking them. Cruz's hands roamed freely now, claiming, exploring, marking. "I've waited too long for this," she whispered, lips finding Aaliyah's in a fierce, consuming kiss. Aaliyah responded with equal fire, her hands tangling in Cruz's hair, drawing her closer, letting the world fade into neon and shadow and heat. The city buzzed around them, oblivious, while they indulged in stolen touches, whispered names, and the rush of desire unleashed. Minutes passed, or eternity, but when they finally pulled back, breathless, flushed, and laughing softly, Aaliyah rested her forehead against Cruz's, heart racing. "Public or private," she murmured, "we always find the heat." Cruz grinned, brushing a kiss across her nose. "And we'll always make it ours." As they stepped back into the pulse of the city, hands tightly entwined, hearts still racing, they knew that danger, desire, and love had become inseparable for them, for this life, for each other. The studio was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of lamplight, shadows dancing gently across walls streaked with paint and memory. Outside, the city pulsed faintly, unaware of the world contained within these four walls, two hearts, two souls, entwined in a rhythm all their own. Aaliyah lay curled against Cruz, forehead resting on the curve of her shoulder, breathing mingling, pulse-echoing pulse. The warmth of their bodies was a hearth, a sanctuary forged in fire, sweat, and desire. "You're here," Cruz whispered, voice low, tender, a caress in sound. "And I'm home." "Always," Aaliyah murmured, fingers tracing the lines of Cruz's arms, memorizing the heat, the strength, the surrender. "With you, I'm home too." Time slowed, each heartbeat a note in the quiet symphony of love. The battles, the storms, the fires, they had passed, leaving only the soft embers of trust, desire, and the fierce beauty of survival together. Cruz shifted, lips brushing along Aaliyah's collarbone, a whisper of heat and longing. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "The pull, the fire that never dies?" Aaliyah smiled, eyes half closed, heart full. Every moment, every touch, every breath. And in that stillness, wrapped in sheets and warmth and the quiet, sacred bond they had forged, they let themselves melt into one another. Not as victims, not as warriors, but as two souls who had found love in its rawest, fiercest, and most exquisite form. Outside, the city slept. Inside, desire lingered, soft and unbroken, a promise whispered in the spaces between heartbeats. We are fire. We are steel. We are home. And there, in the hush of night, Aaliyah and Cruz lay entwined, flames of forever burning quietly, endlessly, perfectly, just for them.
Thank you so much for choosing to listen to my stories. I appreciate your support. Please go ahead and like the video and subscribe if you have not already. Let me know what you think and what stories interest you. Maybe drop a comment if you want to hear something different or have any ideas on new content.